Who's first?
I don't know. Welcome to the Boles of Life podcast. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Virginia. As we've gone through life, we've learned something important.
I still don't know this intro because life is messy. There are a lot of armchair experts out there who will try to tell you how to make life simple.
But it's not, so you won't find any of that here. Instead, you'll find everyday people who have jumped into the mess of life and are making an adventure of it.
All right, so check this out. It is 1967. There's a Senate subcommittee that has been created, and their purpose is to figure out what Americans are going to do with all their free time. Because technology is advancing in such a way, it's all of these time-saving devices, so a lot of futurists started predicting that the average American would only be working 22 hours a week for 27 weeks a year.
Wouldn't that be nice?
It would be beautiful. But the truth is, the average American actually works nearly 4 more weeks a year than they did in 1979. How's that make you feel?
Well, the futurists were wrong, and I wish they would have been right.
I do too. That just sounds like such a lovely utopian world where you only work for literally half the amount of time most people currently work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
It would be nice.
But here we are.
Here we are. And we brought that up because on this episode, we're going to be talking about the pace of life, or your rhythm of life, how fast you're moving. And kind of ironically, it took us maybe close to 3 months at this point to record this episode because we just had things going on. And that meant we didn't have time to carve out to do this.
Yeah, our pace of life was a little fast,
yes.
We also have 2 children.
We do have 2
that
children.
Need a lot of support.
They do.
In the bedtime hours.
They decided that sleep was not something you needed to do for consecutive hours.
Yeah.
Or even something you needed to do immediately.
Exactly. So that just kind of took away from the time that we normally record the podcast, and now we had to adjust.
We're adjusting because sometimes life is messy and you adjust, and sometimes in the middle of your intro your clock dings the hour, so you probably heard that in the background too. So this podcast, we're diving into your pace of life because there's a question that you get asked regularly, and I suspect you give a very similar answer to most people.
How you doing?
Oh man, I've just been busy.
Oh,
yeah,
busy.
Just busy, man. Life, there's so much going on with work and the kids' activities, and we did the thing at church the other day, and so man, it's just so busy lately.
Wow.
Yeah, and so here's my deal with that response. When that is your go-to response when people ask you how are you doing, oh man, how have you been? Just busy, just been real busy. Here's the truth: you're not busy. That's just your pace of life. If you're always responding that you are busy, you're not. You have chosen for that to be your pace of life.
Dang, Tyler, you're just bringing the hammer down on some folks that are using that as their answer to that question quite often. Their pace of life is busy, and they're choosing that pace of life. That's what you said.
Yeah, and I don't know that anyone would say I've consciously chosen to be busy.
Right.
It's more that we have unconsciously chosen to just let things happen in our lives. We've unconsciously decided that whatever gets asked of us, whatever comes up, like we have to do those things. And we often are bad at saying no to things. I'm pretty bad at saying no to things.
Sure.
Just to go ahead and say it.
We've become yes men and women.
Yes.
We have a fear of missing out. We have a fear of letting people down. We don't have time management skills, and we say yes to everything. We as a general term, but Tyler and Virginia, we too.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's not even that people are choosing to be busy with bad things. Let's get that on the front end. Like the things you're busy with, 99% of it's probably good things to be involved with. It's just unfortunately you're involved with arguably too many things. And
sometimes there are things that you don't have much of a choice on, like a job.
Yeah, absolutely. It eats 40 hours of your week. That's what it does.
Right.
Just this week, somebody asked me to help out in Kid Life, which is our 1st through 5th graders at church. Was something that honestly I really enjoyed doing, which is teaching in a large group setting. It's something I've done in the past. And when they asked, I was kind of keenly interested in doing it because I hadn't gotten to do it in a long time. But then as the week went on and I still had not responded, and I saw how many things I was currently doing, how many things I was going to be doing, about the time that they wanted me to do that. I finally just had to say no to it, not because I didn't want to, not because I wouldn't have enjoyed doing it, but because I recognized that if I said yes to that, I was either going to have to really do it half-hearted, do something else half-hearted, or work in my off time, which is something I strive not to do these days too often. So yeah, I had to say no to something in order to not choose a too fast pace of life.
Right, absolutely. So today we are going to give you some work to do in the middle of this episode. We've given you homework in the past on some of the past episodes. And so if you haven't listened to those before this one, do catch up on this series that we're doing. But today we're going to give you some mid-episode work.
Yes, mid-episode work. So think about everything that's been on your calendar, maybe last week, this week, and next week. Just kind of process through what are some things you've had to do specifically, like, all right, obviously work covered some time, but what about extracurricular things for you, for your kids, hanging out with friends? Like, what are all the things you did that kind of required time of you, maybe even specifically things outside of the home, but you can also think of things around the house as well. How many weeks in the night, or how many nights in the week, I guess is what I'm trying to say there. How many nights in a week would you say, as you kind of process through that you typically have something you're supposed to do on each night? Versus how many nights were you able to simply be at home and be present with kind of we'll call them core people in your life, your family, but maybe that's also inviting friends over if you don't live with any family. So nights a week, how many of them were you home? How many of them did you have some kind of responsibility, obligation, whatever word you want to use? Break down our week a little bit.
Okay, so starting with Sunday, which is a big day for us, we have church and life group in the evening. Mondays are free. Tuesday, we have a friend over with her daughter, and you have an e-group. Wednesday night used to be our podcast recording night, so that kind of is a free night. Yep. So now it's just a normal night for us. Thursday is my e-group. That's all that happens on that evening. Friday night is what we say is our Sabbath, is the start to our Sabbath, and Saturday is the Sabbath, so free for all. So not too much going on. We've had to definitely cut down.
Yes.
Because we used to have maybe one or two more nights that would have something on it. So that's what our week kind of looks like right now.
Yep. All right. Now let's dive in a little bit deeper from the amount of time. I know you work from home, but let's say from the amount of time that our kids get home until bedtime. How much time is there, and what does that kind of look like?
Yeah, so we only have about 2 hours from the time that the kids get home to when we start the bedtime routine. Start the bedtime routine. Bath time, all that kind of stuff. So 2 hours. And what was the question?
Just kind of breaking down what some of that looks like.
Okay, so we get home, we have a little bit of time just watching TV, eat a snack, and then we get supper ready, we have supper, and then at that point we play until it's time to start the bedtime routine. So I mean, it's a very short amount of time in reality.
And how long is bedtime taking right now?
Well, 1 to 2 hours depending on the nights.
I don't know that we've gotten all the way to 2 hours.
We have.
Hour and a half feels realistic.
We've gotten to 2 hours. Okay. At least twice.
Oh, okay. I didn't keep count of time then.
Yep.
But yeah, so our evenings, even on the evenings that we don't technically have any other responsibilities outside of the house, even those are pretty fast paced just because of where our work bumps up against our home life. So our pace of life, it's just busy. I don't think that's really a controversial thing for anyone to agree to. If you're involved in anything outside of your work with other people, like, you probably feel that. Maybe even just work alone makes you feel that busy pace. So in just a second, we're going to talk about how we kind of got to this point. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick ad break.
All right. So how did we get here? How did we get to this place where we have the busy pace of life, where our pace of life is just busy?
Yeah, we kind of mentioned it on the beginning of this, and really it was our last episode of this Rhythm of Life series. But in a nutshell, we've created a ton of time saving devices. Like, think about the dishwasher, for instance. That's a time saving device. I mean, the microwave is,
Our cars.
your car is a time saving device. Like, there's all these things we have created to save time. We try to automate as much as we can, especially like in the business world. You're trying to automate things that way you don't have to think about it. And why do you automate something? So you don't have to think about it, so you have space for something else. Because in reality, what we wanted all these time saving devices to do was to give us more time to do the things we enjoy, to slow down and just really enjoy our life. That was why futurists thought people were going to only work 22 hours a week, because there was going to be all these devices that were going to cut down on the things they needed to do. But instead, what we did was we adopted the pace of technology. So our technology is continually getting faster and faster in the way it can do things. I mean, take the internet, for instance. You remember back to dial-up days, you literally had to make sure nobody was on the phone. If you had the wrong kind of phone system, somebody could call and kick you off the internet. It took forever just to connect. And did you know, random fact, that sound that it made when you logged in did nothing? That was literally just a sound created to make you feel like something was happening.
I think I knew that.
Yeah, it's nuts. You had to listen to that obnoxious wailing sound just so you felt like the internet was happening.
Something's happening.
Yes. And the whole reason they had to create a sound there was because the amount of time it took to log on to the internet. Now, if the internet takes more than about half a second to load up on your web browser, you're already starting to get a little bit anxious of like, why is this not here yet? Or when was the last time you opened Instagram and the video didn't just immediately play? Like, it's annoying now.
That day that Instagram crashed.
Oh gosh, yeah. And everyone's heart went, oh no!
What's going on? my internet must be down. My cell service must be off. But it was just the internet of Instagram had just crashed.
Yep. And so instead of allowing ourselves to have the time that, in theory, some of these time-saving devices created, in actuality, we just adopted their pace, and their pace is only getting faster, but yet we continue to try to keep up with the pace of technology. We're trying to match that speed.
That's not good.
It's not. It's as John Mark Comer puts it, the speed of our lives, the pace of our lives is actually starting to do violence against our souls, because our souls are not meant to travel at the pace that we have set in our modern world.
I don't know if you remember this, but one day we were traveling with our kids, probably to see family, and I believe Ezra was crying, and I made the statement, "Oh, I wish they could make a car that would allow moms and their babies, like my mom to hold their baby while they were driving down the road, so that we wouldn't have to worry about the whole seat belt, making sure you're safe, all of the car seat safety stuff. Like, I just wish I could just sit and hold my child while we drive 70, 80 miles per hour down the highway." And do you remember your response?
No.
You said, "We weren't meant to travel at this speed."
Oh, yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so true. Like, we weren't meant to travel at 70, 80 miles per hour down a highway. Like, that's why traveling with children is really difficult, because you can't hold your child while you're walking, or even just in like a wagon, which is technology too. But like, you know, we have to go fast everywhere we go, and that's not safe for us if we don't have some sort of harness system in, and even then, like, you're at risk. And so that kind of just made me go, wow, like, if we really did live in a time where we didn't have all this fast-paced technology, you know, we'd probably have less heartache and frustrations and exhaustion.
Yeah. I don't remember if I mentioned it in our technology episode or not, but Amish people actually do still adopt new technologies. But instead of immediately adopting them, what they do is they actually wait, let's say it's 10 years. I don't know how long. They wait 10 years after a new technology comes out, and then they evaluate its effects on society as a whole. And they chose not to adopt the technology of automobiles because they saw the way it was spreading people out and causing people to not be connected to one another and their core family, their core people, and they just tell like in the long term that's not going to be good for society.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know if speed was necessarily there, but it was a part of the underlying effects of why they chose that.
Yeah.
So think about Jesus. Jesus was never too busy for people. Somehow he managed to regularly take moments to go and be alone and pray while also living in the midst of this system, whatever, that had started to form around him, these crowds of people forming around him that wanted to be connected to him. He was also never too busy to connect with those people. I mean,
Yeah, he always stopped and took care of and healed people and talked to people. He never, was in a rush.
yeah.
He walked everywhere he went.
Yes.
He definitely was not in a rush.
Yeah. You think about small children. Anytime people tried to keep small children away from him because they're like, oh, he's too busy for these little kids. He's like, no, bring the kids to me. He was walking down roads and lepers or blind people are yelling out to him and people are trying to push them to the side because he's too busy for them. Nope, he's not. He pauses and interacts with them. But probably just like the clearest story we get is the story of, I'll never know how to say the name right, but Jairus's daughter. And then there's an interruption story in the middle of it. Remember which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's when he was going to heal Jairus's daughter. But the bleeding woman, the woman who was sick, came to him in the middle of the crowd and just touched the hem of his robe. And he stopped. Who touched me? And they were like, what are you talking about, Jesus? There's a billion people around you. Somebody, everybody's touching you. But he stopped and took the time to heal that woman and forgive her of her sins. And he still managed to make it to Jairus' daughter.
And it wasn't just to stop and heal her, because that actually happened without him stopping.
Right. She was healed as soon as she touched his robe.
He stopped to validate her.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. You're living in a town that's probably got a couple hundred people max. They're aware of who she is, what she's dealing with. They're in a town where it's literally unacceptable for her to be interacting with people because of her illness, because of what she's suffering from. And Jesus takes the time to not only validate her in the way she's probably feeling in that moment, but it is also communicating something to all of those people around that, hey, she's no longer dealing with this. She's been healed from it. Like, because who was going to confirm that? How are they going to confirm that otherwise if Jesus doesn't stop? And he stops in the middle of going to try and prevent someone from dying to validate this woman, not only in her internal thoughts, but also in the community.
Yeah.
And then he ultimately makes it there. Turns out Jairus' daughter had died. Oops. But Jesus is Jesus, and he manages to resurrect her.
Yeah, even then he wasn't in a rush because he knew.
He knew exactly how this was gonna go for it.
Well, and we say he knew. Yes, he knew, but like he also trusted in the Lord. I mean, in himself, but like in God.
In God the Father.
In God the Father.
Yeah.
He trusted that he was gonna be able to do something for Jairus' daughter.
Yeah. Yep. He was never too busy for people. So here's what we're going to do coming out of this, because it's really easy to hear, hey, my pace is too fast, and go, yeah, I'd love to live a slower pace. Thanks for pointing it out to me. Now I feel anxious about how much I have to do and how fast I go. And there's one more thing I need to feel bad about, is that my life is too busy. Thank you. You guys are awesome. Okay. Well, let's start taking some practical steps then.
First of all, chill. Did nobody put that shame or guilt on you? So just take a breath. Take a breath. Sorry. Enneagram 1 over here.
I was gonna say that's my anxiety
or,
coming out.
Whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that's all of my anxieties. Yes, you're right. No one's putting that shame on you for sure. But yeah, the thing to do is not just to gain knowledge that, hey, Jesus moved at a slower pace. Hey, we're not really meant to move at this pace. It's not just to gain knowledge, but it's to be reformed in your rhythms of life in a way that they're going to point you into living the way of Jesus, so to
Yeah,
speak.
I think this is a good stopping point or pausing point to say, like, why are we talking about this again? Like, why is this important again? That we slow down, that we say no to things, and because we talked, in this whole series about what our habits, how our habits are forming us, and if you have a busy pace of life, then your formation is going to be that you don't have time for people, you don't have time for yourself, you don't have time for your family, you don't even have time for your spiritual growth. And therefore, you're being formed by this culture of convenience and fast pace and say yes to everything and do everything and be an advocate for everyone and an ally for everybody. But in reality, like, we need to slow down so that we can actually put forth the effort, the true effort for the things and the people in our life right here in front of us.
No, that's good. So here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna take some time and you're gonna write down what
This is
are
what we
the
advise you to do.
ideal priorities. Yes, is what we would advise you to do. Yes, write down what all the ideal priorities for your life would be. Not what your reality is currently, but if you could set your pace of life, what things would be priority for you?
And I've done this before and still had too many things.
Oh, absolutely.
So, like, it's okay if you have like 12 things and
Oh
then
gosh,
you're like,
yeah,
how
you're
do I
gonna
do
list
all this? And then you're
so
gonna
many things.
Yeah, then you're gonna have to be like, okay, let me back up a little
Yeah.
bit. So, and it's taken like years,
Yeah.
for me to start to cut back on some things. But anyways,
Yeah.
your priorities.
No, that's good. This is your drunk drawer moment to literally just throw everything on there that feels like it would
Brain
be a
dump.
priority. Yeah, brain dump.
dump
There
it.
you go. That feels like it would be a priority for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and it hurts sometimes to cut things.
Yes.
But next, after that, create a calendar or get like one of those dry erase calendars like we have. We like to use that, and that's a real good visual for, oh my
there's too
goodness,
much
the month
happening.
of January has way too much in it. What are we going to do? How are we going to, navigate this? So whether it's paper or dry erase or just a notebook, just create a calendar that puts everything that you do. And maybe it's, not just the month of January, but just in general, what is everything that you do?
And then after you've got all these big things on there, like here's all the things that I can think of that I've got coming up. What you want to do after that is actually just spend a week or two living your life and start tracking and noticing some of the small but repetitive things that also have to happen in the midst of it. Like, hey, it takes me 30 to 45 minutes to wash the dishes every day or every other day. Hey, it's going to take me X amount of time to fold the clothes every week, and all of these kind of things that are also a part of your life that probably didn't make it on that calendar in the first place, because who schedules the time they're going to wash the dishes? Not a lot of people.
Right.
And so that's still part of your time though. So you want to kind of track your time, figure out where all of your time is genuinely going.
Yeah. And so then after you're tracking it and you're kind of realizing, where's my time going, you need to evaluate where you spend your time. And is it actually aligning with your priorities? And if it's not, what do you need to do?
Yep.
And one thing that popped into my mind was, if you looked at your calendar and you're like, I really don't have that much, but I feel busy all the time, then you need to be evaluating where that time is going, because it could be going to TV watching or scrolling on your phone or stuff that really isn't lining up with your priorities. And therefore you're wondering, why do I have a pile of laundry, or why are the dishes not getting washed? And it's because you're not taking 15 minutes to do some of those tasks, because sometimes that's really all it takes. If you hadn't let them piled up too much, 15 minutes, and then you can scroll on your phone later, instead of spending a ton of time on that. So
Yep. And as you're evaluating the time comparison to priorities, one of the questions you do ask in that process is, okay, are these things that aren't being hit actually a priority, or would they just be nice if I could do them? Because some of the things, that's kind of the brain dump part of the priority list, is evaluating and recognizing that some things would be nice but aren't actually real priorities. But so after you've kind of done that process and you say, okay, well, these things are still priority, but they're not really making it into my week. All right. The next thing you're going to have to do is start removing things from your calendar. And that's also really hard. And it may be, yes, this whole one thing, like this this one night of the week we go and do X. Well, that one thing just has to leave the calendar. Maybe, but more realistic is to go, okay, we're just going to do this thing a little bit less. Instead of, hey, every night post dinner, post kids in the bed, we watch 2 episodes of a show. Maybe it's, all right, we're just going to watch 1 episode of a show so that we can have a few extra minutes to devote to whatever priority isn't currently happening in your life. Don't go overboard. Don't try and eliminate everything because you're a perfectionist and that's your all-in personality. Maybe that's me as a perfectionist and my all-in personality. Most of the time, if you do that kind of thing, if you just try to do this all at once and just change everything, you're going to burn out on it and it's not going to be realistic for the long run. So take your time. One thing a little less often is probably the right way to start realigning your schedule.
Yeah, and start practicing saying, "Let me think about that before you say yes." Let me look at my schedule before you say yes. And so you might start to respond to requests or activities a little differently, but also you might have an idea of what you automatically say no to. So it might be just a few things that you're like, I cannot do that anymore. I have to say no, to these specific things. If there's kind of a running, trend there of something that you need to say no to.
Yep. For instance, I don't do any kind of meetings with people on Fridays. Doesn't really matter much of anyone. I don't meet with people on Fridays because that's my day off that I spend with you now that you also do Fridays off. Yes. And I love that. And we spend preparing our home for Sabbath, which is something we'll talk about more later in this series. But that's one of the things we do on Friday. And therefore, I say no to meetings and all that on Friday. You just find little things that you can say no to.
Yep. So just be patient with yourself in the process. And as Tyler said, don't be a perfectionist.
Yes, avoid my tendencies. Obviously, we just went through a whole list of things there with you to kind of think through. Figured maybe one of the easiest ways for this to be applicable after you've turned this podcast off is we turn this into a blog post and also a download that you can grab from bolesoflife.com, or really just scroll down into your podcast show notes and you'll see the direct link right there. It's just Pace of Life evaluations. And as you work through the process, take your time with it, as Virginia said. On our next episode, we're going to spend some time talking about a daily practice and a weekly practice that we can see in the life of Jesus that's going to help us start to reform our pace of life. But you'll have to come back for the next episode of the Boles of Life podcast to hear what those practices are.
All right. Thank you for joining us on this journey and sitting with us while our clock dings on the hour, our dog snorts, or if you're watching the video, the vacuum that's sitting behind me. I just kind of laughed about that in the middle of this episode because it is Friday and we are getting ready for the Sabbath weekend. So thanks for joining us on this journey. If you want to find out more, you can go to bolesoflife.com.
You can subscribe on anywhere that you listen to podcasts. I'd recommend Overcast as a great app, but wherever you listen to, make sure you subscribe so that it just pops up whenever we randomly have enough time to make the next episode, hopefully more consistently.
Please share this podcast and these episodes with your friends.
Yep. Give us a rating wherever it is that you listen, and you can also write out a little review. I typed with my fingers there for all of you who are watching or not watching. But yeah, write out a review. Let people know why you like this podcast, why you listen to it. And Virginia?
You can go to bolesoflife.com/podcast, and there's a place where you can record your voice telling us what is messy in your life that you are loving, and we will feature you on the podcast.
Thanks for joining us on the journey. We'll see you guys again soon.